Hello, how are you? I am so glad we can all be a part of this today. I'm Jenny. A little bit of information about me. I have been in real estate for close to about 20 years. I do property management and also real estate investing for myself, from long-term properties to short-term properties to even some international properties. So I know firsthand how to handle my properties, and I also do property management, rehab, and real estate for other investors. So what I wanted to talk about today and what it looks like in order to even get started and how to do 9 things that you should know before investing in real estate. I felt like was a good topic today, and how to even get involved in real estate. So many times people are scared to even get started, and so that they might have the resources, they might have the money, they just don't know what those next steps are. So that's what I wanted to get into today. And one of the first things I wanted to talk about was what that looks like and how investing, while it is passive for the most part, does involve a little bit of work. And by that, I mean whether you're going to hire a property manager or place your own tenants and manage yourself, there are activities that are involved in finding investment properties that you need to be active and proactive with. National averages have tenants turning over properties about 54%. So every year, 54% of tenants are turning over and not renewing their lease. What this means for you is that if you're not, there's a couple things what this might mean, is you want to make sure that you're actually proactively wanting tenants to stay in your property. This would be number one, because if you're able to keep them in your property, you don't have this turnover, you don't have the initial cost of getting the property ready every year. For us, so the national average is about 54%. For us, with our tenants that we've got, our average is about 72% stay in our properties. So the turnover for our properties is we have a lot less work that goes involved in renewing a lease versus getting a property ready for rent. That's number one. The first thing that I want to talk about, though, is when you're bringing in property management, you want to, and if that's what you decide to do, you make sure that you're interviewing the right people. There's a lot of property management companies, and I know I'm a property management company, so I see when people come to us what they're coming from, what they didn't like, and just being in the industry, knowing other areas of issues with other companies. And that's communication, the types of reporting that they're going to give you, what that looks like, how often they're going to tell you things that are going on with the property, the types of inspections they're going to do on the property, how often they're communicating with the tenants, what your reports look like, what happens if a tenant's not paying. All of those things, you want to make sure that they're sticking to what they say they're going to do, because if they don't, then not only are you dealing with issues with the tenant and property management company, but in essence, you'd then be babysitting all of them, which winds up making more work for you. And that's not what we want here. We want you to either efficiently manage the property on your own or hire a company that is rated to do exactly what you're looking for them to do, so that you can be more hands-off. For instance, what we do with our owners is we give thresholds on the amount of money we're able to spend on their behalf without contacting them. They get access to all of their accounts online. They see what bills we've paid on their behalf. They see copies of their bills. They see when their tenant has paid and if they have not paid. They get a breakdown of everything. So just make sure that you're getting all of that information if you do choose to go to the property management route. One of the other things that you want to look for in a property manager is getting recommendations. For example, if you're looking at properties, chances are you're using a realtor. That realtor has got connections on who they're working with, who they know in the area is doing a good job. Go ahead and start talking to these people, your mortgage lender, your title company, all of the people that are getting involved in the real estate deal, other property investors. The more communicating you can do with other people, the better, because you're going to start hearing different experiences and who works well for what they're doing. Number 2 is successful real estate investing requires understanding of the market. Not just, hey, I'm going to invest in Tampa. It's understanding the market in a micro level. Meaning, if you want to invest in an area that you don't necessarily live in, which I have done several times, you need to actually go and visit the area. For example, I'm originally from Maryland, and if anybody understands what Baltimore looks like, we can go in Baltimore City and have one good block, or the very next block could be a horrible section for you to want to put a tenant in. And it all depends on what you're looking for, but you need to understand down to a micro level what that looks like. So for example, I'm down in the Tampa area right now. I am looking for properties that I want to buy. So what I'm doing is I'm actually spending the next several weeks moving from an Airbnb to an Airbnb in different areas so that I can research the area for myself. And once I get a better understanding of those areas that I actually like, then I will have a realtor get involved and then start showing me properties in this area. But understanding and doing your own homework first and understanding the market, what the rental values can get. And that's also something that your realtor can help you with in determining pricing. The biggest thing is just understanding and doing your own due diligence prior to getting involved. If you're new to real estate investing, the number one way to make sure that you're doing that is to invest in the area that you're familiar with, which is around your house, your neighborhood, your community. Those are the areas that you're the most familiar with. And that's how I got started. I didn't just start buying properties in different states, in a different country or anything like that. My first properties actually came from the houses that I lived in initially. So they were my primary residence. And then I moved and I kept them as my investment property. So I knew the area in a lot of detail and I was able to go ahead and make that happen. So understanding the area is a very big portion of that. As we talked about finding a property manager and what that looks like, the next thing is finding other professionals, from your title company to your real estate agent. The way that you can find these is going and starting to talk to people, other real estate investors, coming to different networking events, meetup groups, and what that looks like to start talking to hard money lenders. You're starting to build your database of professionals in the industry that can help you. And every time that I might not have the answer to something or might not know who to reach out to, I have a vast network of people and I know exactly who I can call to say, hey, I need the contact for this person. Can you find that for me? And chances are I get it. Just because I don't necessarily know all the answers, I know the people who can get me those answers. And that's what's important, is you don't need to know everything about real estate investing before you get started. You just need to know who to go to get the answers and who's going to be able to give you all of those answers and help you along your way. So we talked about title, a real estate attorney. Those are important in several states. Instead of working with the title company, you would be working with a real estate attorney. So finding out who that is, if they've got any benefits for working with a real estate investor. A lot of times, if you're a multi-property purchaser throughout a year, they are giving discounts. And so being able to negotiate what that looks like is really important. An accountant, this is another big one for somebody who is working with an accountant who doesn't understand real estate investing. It might make it a little more difficult. So working with a CPA, an accountant firm who understands real estate investing, what they can deduct, what they can't deduct, things like that is really good. Once again, you can find a lot of these people through, you can find Facebook groups, you can find networking groups in your town. You can find, online meetups and things like that, where you're able to get in touch with all of these people and start asking the questions that you need. When we talk about real estate agents, one of the things that is very important to understand is there are real estate agents who help people buy and sell primary residence. So that's the regular properties that everyone's buying to live in. And that is great, but those are not the same people that should be helping you buy your investment property for a couple reasons. So the first would be they're used to working off of people's emotions, and if they like the property because that's where their kids are going to grow up, or because they like the backyard for their dog, or it's close to something. But when you're working with a real estate investor, you're no longer looking at emotions. You're looking at what it looks like financially, and it's all numbers based. The second you bring emotions into real estate investing, you might as well pack up and be done. I've had several people do that. I've had several people start buying investment properties just off the emotional aspect, and it never goes well for them. So you always want to buy off of whether it financially makes sense through the numbers. And so finding a real estate agent who is understanding what an investor needs and is looking for is very important. On the same side, when you're buying, especially a property that's already been an investment property, one of the things that is in important is to make sure that they've got a lease in place. So when you're putting a property under contract, what does that look like? Are they making sure that part of your addendums to the contract are so that you can look at what the lease is? Make sure the terms are fitting for you. Make sure that they're actually paying. So getting a copy of the register, the tenant register, making sure the documents are in order. So if it's an older property, is there lead-based paint? Is there the addendum in place? So making sure all of those things are in place. I had an investor who came to us who wanted my help, and the problem is he didn't use us on the real estate side, and at first he didn't use us on the property management side. And what that looked like was he bought a property that he thought was a really good deal, that the tenant was going to be paying him X amount of dollars, and every month he'd be cash flowing. But what happened was once he got into the property, because they didn't do the proper due diligence and his realtor didn't understand to ask certain questions, he realized that the utilities were not put in the tenants' names because it was a multi-unit building. It was an older multi-unit building, and the utilities couldn't be separated unless you go and get a plumber to separate all the lines, the electrician. So water and electric was all part of one master utility bill, which then the owner paid for. So that was a large expense for the building that he's now responsible for that he didn't realize. And it's going to take him a lot of capital in order to fix that problem that, had he done the research and the due diligence ahead of time, could have found, and either made the decision to move forward knowing that he had those expenses, renegotiate the offer, which you can do, or back out because it now financially doesn't make sense. So all of those things are really important when you're looking at buying an investment property. And then number 4, you've got hard money lenders. I've got several deals going on right now where the most amount of money I've put out of pocket right now is my closing costs, which was about $5,000. So I've got 2 hard money loans out. They base it off of the capital of the project or a piece of property, and then they loan you the money. So I got 100% financing with a hard money lender, and they also gave me 100% financing on the repair money that's needed in order to fix the property up. And once you do that, there's several scenarios. So in this particular scenario that I'm doing, I'm actually fixing the property up to flip it. So once I sell the property, he will get his money back and I'll make my profits. There's other scenarios where you can do a hard money loan up front. What happens is, if I was going to buy the property that needed work and then I wanted to go ahead and keep it as a rental, in essence, that would be what you would call the BRRRR method: buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So what happens with that situation is, if you choose to get a hard money loan in that situation, which you absolutely can, couple things to keep in mind. You'll basically have a double settlement, so you'll have some additional cost incurred, because when you're buying the property first, you're buying it and you've got hard money loan. So that's your first portion of the purchase. But then you have to obviously give the hard money lender their money back within a certain time frame, 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on what the project is and depending upon the agreed upon term. With a hard money lender, so you'll have the first term, and then when you're done the property, as I was saying, you want to make sure that you are giving the hard money lender their money back when the time is right. So by doing that, in essence, you have to refinance out the property, which means refi it into a different loan. But if you have done this and you do it properly, you can fix the property up using the hard money lender. Then you can place a tenant in the property. And so right before you refinance the property, at this point, it's cash flowing. So the refinance can be done through a DSCR loan. And that means you don't have to use your credit and your income against this property. What they do is they use the income of the rental, as long as the rental amount is going to be greater than the mortgage payment, so you're going to be cash flowing. Then they pay off the hard money lender, and you've now got a loan that at this point you would need to put 20% down on. However, if you've done the rehab properly, the equity that you've built in the rehab should more than cover the 20% down. And in essence, you potentially could actually pull out additional cash when you're done. So there's several different ways. It's a lot of steps, but once again, understanding, having your corner, who to help you do this, what it looks like to find the right hard money lender, the time frame to get this done, the rehab, and then using a mortgage lender who is familiar with the DSCR loan is really important. And then number 5 to this whole ordeal is managing tenants, as we know, can be a nightmare. So some of the biggest things in order to be proactive with this is to make sure that you're screening them properly. By doing that, you want to make sure that you've got, so for us, we have an 18-point inspection of what we're looking for with our tenants. The biggest thing for us is making sure we've done our due diligence ahead of time, because if we can screen our tenants thoroughly or the applicants thoroughly ahead of time, it saves a ton of back end work when we just quickly put a tenant in just because we want to rent the property. For us, our average days on market is about 21 days. I know other companies can get it done in say 2 weeks, but for us, we have a less than 1% eviction rating. So for me, I'd rather take those extra few days to make sure we've got the right tenant than just placing any tenant in there. It's so important because what happens is so many people are looking for that quick dollar right now instead of realizing what the additional time, commitment, and financial burden it's going to cost to have the wrong tenant in. I mean, we've had experiences, not tenants we've placed, but tenants that when we've taken over properties for management that someone else has placed or the owner has placed, and they're really nightmare tenants. And sometimes they've destroyed the property or they won't leave, or we've got to go through the eviction process. So it's just a lot that goes into it when you're not doing your upfront due diligence. What I will say to also round out the whole tenant application portion is make sure you have a checklist of what it looks like, of what you're going to require for any applicant. Because the second that you screen someone differently than you screen someone else, you easily could have a fair housing issue. So what we do, it is on our website. It is very well written out. If we deny someone, it is very clear what our reasoning is for denying them. And it is all based on part of our 18-point checklist, from credit to income, their debt to income, any past judgments, delinquencies. It's just a list of things. It's very easy for us to go off of those things and not even base it on anything else, which is what saves us from any fair housing issues, as you should do as well. So making it very clear what your criteria is ahead of time makes it even easier. One other thing I'll say is we allow pets, mostly on a case-by-case basis, but you'll find that more people have pets than they don't, especially, smaller breed type pets are a really good way to get tenants in there. So what we do though is we do the same type of screening for the pets. We've got a screening criteria. We take it through. We make sure they're up to date on their vaccines. We make sure they've got the picture of the dog is exactly what they say they're going to have. That way there's no mistakes. We've got all of those things in place. And what we do is we require them to update it every year with the updated stuff. And we also charge a pet fee monthly. So that way you're a little bit protected. On the property management side, what we do is we then guarantee that pet up to, I think it's like $1,800. So if the pet that we have allowed into the property damages the property, we will reimburse the owner up to $1,800. But there's just a lot of things that you can do to protect yourself while also being as convenient of a landlord to someone as possible, which in essence makes them want to stay longer. This is another good one. Number 6, renters are often as picky as buyers these days, and that's very true. But they can only be so picky because we're in a market right now where there's not a lot of inventory. So that's a good thing for investors because, once again, even if tenants want to move right now, they're not finding properties that they can either buy or rent. So they're just staying. I think it's like 56% of renters right now. There's 53% of them being a renter by choice. So what that means is we've got the millennials who choose to rent a lot of times just for the convenience of being able to travel. Then you've even got the baby boomer generation who is kind of just done with maintaining an entire house. They did that. The kids are grown. They're out of there. So they no longer want all of those responsibilities. So they're downsizing. They're sometimes going to a condo or they're moving into an apartment so that they don't have to maintain maintain anything. So we're finding a larger pool of tenants, but we don't have a ton of inventory for houses or apartments. So what that's doing is it's creating a demand that is not quite allowing tenants to be as demanding as possible. Number 7 was find a real estate agent with specific experience in investment properties. As I had said before, finding someone with experience doing that is very important. Number 8, big maintenance costs can wipe out your profits. What you need to know is when you're doing that, you want to invest for cash flow, obviously, but you also need to know that building equity in these properties is the number 1 priority here. So there can be several months sometimes where you're constantly putting some money into the property, and it's not because you want to per se, but you need to make sure things are taken care of. I'd rather see someone put money into the property and put enough in there to actually fix what the issue is than duct tape it, is what I like to call it, and then have a bigger issue down the road. So making sure that you've got that nest egg of money to be able to take care of these issues is very important. So by doing that, you can make sure that you've got these repairs taken care of. And when you're doing the repairs, once again, depending on what they are, it could be repairs that need to be done or repairs that are just maintenance type, but repairs and upgrades will add value to the property. But for example, when you're spending money on the property, you might be then losing some money during that monthly time frame. So you've got a tenant in the property, you are building equity, it's appreciating, and what happens is as those years go on, you are building that. And so the last time the market was at the height and the last time the interest rates were low is the time that I decided to take my investment properties, refinance them all out, and pull the cash close to $1 million to start investing in other properties. So that's where the real benefit is, and in investing is holding it for long term. And so by doing that just know what you're looking at in order to buy. So number 9, location is important, but it is all about education. So what that means is understanding that you know what you're doing. I mean, you can go take as many books and read or talk with as many people as possible. But for me, working with someone and understanding what you're doing is just as important than finding the proper location and settling on that. Is surrounding yourself with a team of real estate investors, professionals from, property management, title, attorney, hard money lenders, just the whole gamut. And you're going to do that by continuing to network and be with people. The biggest thing is to put all of that into to wrap it all up, basically, is what it looks like to then what you're going to do every day. The biggest thing for me every day is to get online, start understanding where I want to be, what I want to invest in, who I need to do to help me get there, which means what groups, what networking, what coach, what realtor, who is it that's going to help me get to that point, and then start moving in that direction. So a lot of people have questions on financing. How am I going to be able to buy it? Well, find somebody that you know that can get you to lender or a hard money lender, so that at least that can ease your mind of what that next step's going to look like. And by doing that, you're taking one step in the right direction. So the biggest thing always is to start just acting in that fashion, to just keep moving forward. I see so many times people want to invest, but they just get frozen because they don't know where to go or what to do. And so that's my biggest advice to you guys, that you can get any of these things, get answers to any of these things, no matter where or who you talk to, as long as you're talking to the right professionals. But until you take that advice and put it into action, all it is just continued education. And so sometimes, as long as you're doing your due diligence, I always say fail forward. That's how I learn. But if you're doing it in the proper way, the failing part of it might just be roadblocks, might just be speed bumps. So we're not talking about massive failure in real estate, because chances are that's not going to happen, especially if you're surrounding yourself with the right people and the right network of investors.